And if we could keep moving around to a minimum, that'd be awesome. I'm looking at you, John and Christine.
Can't do it. Sorry.
I know my coworkers. All right, we're all set to go then.
Okay, so I think we can get started now. Hello and welcome to the end of the year webinar. My name is Elizabeth Koss and I'm the virtual trainee this year. To start off, we would like to thank you all for joining us today. Before we begin, I would like to address a few logistical details. First, we will provide a brief introduction of our speakers. Following the speakers panel, there will be time for some questions. Because of the number of participants, your telephone lines will be muted throughout the call. However, we will unmute your phones one at a time during the Q&A at the end of the panel. You will need to press the star button and then the pound button on your phone to request to be unmuted to ask your questions. You can also submit questions at any point during the presentations via the chat box on your webinar console. You may send a chat to the whole audience or to the presenters only. We will compile your questions throughout the webinar and address them at the end. Please note that we may not be able to address every question and we may combine some of the questions with some answers. This entire webinar is being recorded and will be available on AUCD's website following the webinar. There will also be a short question evaluation survey at the close of the webinar, so we invite you to provide feedback on the webinar at that time. So now I would like to start off by introducing the Assistant Virtual Trainee, Shada Kamsey. Shada, I think you might be on mute still.
Shada, you should be ready now.
Hi everybody, my name is Shada Kamsey. I am the Assistant Virtual Trainee and I am from the Kansas University Center on Developmental Disabilities at the University of Kansas.
Wonderful, thanks Shada. And then I would also like to introduce our supervisor, Christine Lau, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her role for us as trainees.
Awesome. Do you mind flipping over to the next slide, please? All right, awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Christine, and I am the AUCD Program Specialist. My role here is to focus on trainee engagement. So overall, I'm focusing on engaging and promoting leadership among our current and former trainees as well as early career professionals. Part of what I do here is I work closely with the virtual trainee and the assistant virtual trainee as well as the trainee liaison to make sure all of you can be involved in the network on a more national level. So during this webinar, I would like to introduce our AUCD Associate Executive Director of Research and Policy, John Cheetah.
Thanks, Christine, and thank you to Liz and to Shada and to Christine for the support that they've provided throughout the year. This is all of you as trainees, webinars, and technical assistants.
Excuse me. Hi, everyone.
Journey. And certainly congratulations to all of you for completing what is a rigorous and lengthy, and I hope exciting interdisciplinary training program. We here at AUCD understand very well the interdisciplinary nature of disability care and the disability competency that's needed to help individuals with disabilities of all ages and their families and guardians, to support them so that they can be as independent as possible and participate meaningfully in their home communities in ways that they want to do so. That's the entire purpose of this training program, really to develop that disability competency, to understand the interdisciplinary nature of the training that you went through and the interdisciplinary nature of the care that you have experienced in your clinical settings. It's something that I've experienced on a personal level. In 1993, I sustained a spinal cord injury as a result of a bicycle accident. It was certainly a combination of doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, PTs, OTs, some mental health therapy, certainly some VR on the backside as I was looking to get back to work. And I think, as we all know, in dealing with individuals with disabilities, it isn't just health care that we need to talk about, but overall health, looking at the social determinants of health. And I'm sure you've all experienced this during your training, your policy work, your exposure to your different settings during your training programs. That's about transportation, that's about housing, that's about nutrition, that's about education. It's really about putting all the pieces together. And certainly as individual trainees and as you go out into the working world, this isn't something that you can do alone to help solve all the problems that you'll encounter when treating and working with individuals with disabilities on your employment path. But you now have an understanding that you probably didn't have before about the needs that individuals with disabilities face, the needs that those families face, and the entire support system that needs to be built around them in order for them to accomplish their individual goals and certainly live as productive and independent a life as possible. So before I came to Washington a number of years ago, I worked for 15 years in the state of Minnesota in the largest nonprofit community-based rehabilitation provider there. It was called the Courage Center. I had the privilege of working with some of those allied health professionals I met before after I had sustained my spinal cord injury. The health system, as we all know, and certainly as you've probably experienced as a result of your training fellowships, doesn't work very well for individuals with disabilities. There's often a need for care coordination, again, putting all these different pieces together. That's something that we experienced, that I experienced during that 15-year journey as I worked in that community-based nonprofit rehabilitation facility. And we decided to do something about it. We brought together staff members from all different parts of the organization, including those therapists, some interns, and we all talked about what was wrong and what we couldn't do on behalf of the people with disabilities who came through our doors. And we decided to put together a better service model. We ended up getting some grant funds from the federal government to support a very integrated health model that looked at everything from medical care to community-based care. And as all of you know, it's often the non-medical care that people with disabilities and their families rely on more to succeed in their home communities. So we combined care in that clinical setting with in-home care, bringing social workers into a home environment and bringing that knowledge back to the clinic. So where people saw prescription bottles that were empty, that weren't being refilled, those challenges weren't necessarily being communicated back to the clinicians. Where we saw mail eligibility forms for insurance programs that weren't being filled out so that families could be served in that clinical context. And we developed problem-solving techniques and better communication patterns to help make those families succeed. Now, why do I tell this story? And what does that have to do with you as trainees? As a result of your training, you have this knowledge. You have gained this interdisciplinary appreciation for all the different pieces that need to be put together for people to succeed in the community. Not just individuals with disabilities, but again, the families, the guardians, the entire support system around those people with disabilities. And often they may be looking at food security or just paying the monthly bills as their number one concern. These aren't problems that you can solve alone. But these are problems that you have an understanding of and that you can bring to your professional context as you move on and you grow and become leaders in your chosen careers. You have policy knowledge as a result of your fellowship. Many of you, most of you, attended the Disability Policy Summit. You understand and are probably experiencing and have experienced the different policy challenges that people with disabilities and their families face as a result of decisions that are made at a political level. Again, these aren't things that you can solve yourself, but they can be addressed both in that professional context and by using ACD and the LEND network and beyond the LEND network, reaching out to other partners within the AUCD community. Our UCIDs, the University Centers for Excellence, that many, or if not all, of our LEND programs are partnering with. And even in some cases, for those of you with an interest in research, our IDDRCs. These are the research centers that are funded across the country. 9 of them are co-located with both LEND programs and UCID programs, where you have bench scientists that are addressing the biological mechanisms, everything from genomics research to developing clinical interventions to better serve individuals with disabilities and their families. You're now a part of this larger family. So stay engaged with us. Please stay engaged with each other, and we have many opportunities to do that. We know that you're a part of a listserv. Be a contributing member of that listserv on an ongoing basis. Because of the knowledge that you have, look at the coworkers that you may find yourself with. Look at your friends. Are they good candidates to become LEND Fellows, to begin to share this network, spread this expertise? As I said, we know there are tremendous challenges within the system. We know these aren't things that you can solve alone. But the greater we build this foundational knowledge, the more that we share this knowledge, the more that you grow in your careers, becoming not just mentees, but mentors to those around you in a professional and a personal setting. The better off our community is going to be, the better off our network is going to be, the better off the entire health system is going to be. So as you move on, I understand this may be a time of anxiety for some of you. What's next for you professionally? And we've got great speakers as a part of our program today who will directly address that from an employer standpoint, from a former LEND trainee standpoint, to give you some advice on what the next steps are on your career path. But please do stay connected to us as an organization, stay connected to the LEND network. Consider running for the board at some point. You have tremendous knowledge to share. You may not think that you're an expert in anything right now, but you do have a tremendous amount of personal experience that many others could benefit from. So please think about additional leadership opportunities within the network. Again, use it for your professional
And as
growth.
I've been working within the network, I've come to
almost every job that I've gotten out of college had nothing to do with an ad in the paper or
and how I can leverage
that dates myself. In an era before
my personal experiences as an employee,
sites like
as
Indeed,
well as when
and Monster
I'm
and
interviewing
others.
others
Those aren't necessarily where you're going to find
enter
the
into the
greatest
network
employment opportunities.
and
It's going to be
understand what
staying
it
connected with your
is
peers,
that we can
with your
offer
mentors, with
for
leaders in
them
the field,
that will
reaching out to
benefit
us,
them not
to individuals
in
here
their
at
current institution.
AUCD as well. Again, you're part of a broader family.
But
You're
once
part
they
of a
get out
broader
into the
network.
working world,
Please
these
use
are
that
skills
to your advantage,
that
and
they
if
can
we
actually
assist
carry
you in any way,
over that will be
that's
beneficial.
what we are here to do. So, again, congratulations.
So in my current role,
all of us here at AUCD,
we're many
we're
different
coming to the end of a journey, but I would say this is the end
whole
of the beginning. You're just launching your careers
different
in
leadership
different ways,
opportunities, and
armed
having
with
not
tremendous
had that
opportunity and
interdisciplinary
knowledge that I hope you'll
training early
continue
on,
to use on
I
behalf
think it
of
would have made
individuals with
it
disabilities
a lot
and
more
their
difficult.
families. So next on our agenda, I have the
Here,
privilege of
once I did
introducing
start working here,
Dougleen
I
Jackson,
actually went to the
who by training is an occupational therapist with 20
20
years of experience in the
that
rehabilitation
has,
field, primarily with individuals with neurodevelopmental disabilities. She holds a PhD in special
Delaware,
education
way
in
back
early
when, but now
childhood, a
changed
master's degree in occupational therapy, a bachelor's in
a
rehabilitation
different
services with a
formatted model and
concentration in
hosted
counseling
elsewhere, but
and a
back
diploma in
then it
massage
was a national
therapy.
leadership
Boy,
consortium
sounds like
on
you're a
self
professional student, Dr. Jackson. A tremendous
mental
amount of
disabilities.
experience.
And I actually
We're
met
very
Betsy
excited to have you join us today. She
during my
is
cohort.
connected to her home community in Florida
Since
in
I've been at the
tremendous ways,
and
in
it's
everything
evident
from assistive
why
technology
interdisciplinary
to serving
training is
as a leader in the
important
LEND program
and how those
there. Very active
experiences
in the National OT
would make one
Association.
applicant
So
stand out
please join me in welcoming Dr. Jackson, and
over another.
thanks for being with
So
us.
many institutions throughout their hiring process Yes, they look at your background. Yes, they look at your education, but they really want to know, can you be a true team player? And in being that, you need to, A, be aware of what those other team members' roles may be, and having undergone previous interdisciplinary training, you've had that exposure. You've come to learn about other professionals, and you've also come to learn about what it is to be a team member if you're not necessarily wearing a particular title, because it's not about the title. It's about what each individual may bring to the table. So families are a big part of that interdisciplinary team, and being in the network helps point that out, how the individual consumer themselves can contribute to that team. It's not a top-down model where it's those professionals who mandate what goes on. We truly are looking to provide family-centered care and advocate for others as well as a profession in everything that we do. So taking an interdisciplinary approach, you come to value each team member, you come to respect them, you come to acknowledge what each person can contribute to that team, and work collaboratively for the greater good of that organization and those individuals whom we work with. So in interviewing, oftentimes the questions come up, oh, how well are you at working in a team? Having gone through these programs, you can lend some personal experience as to what it is you experienced while you were in your different affiliations. So when I interview my interns and previous employment, it's important for me to have them share those experiences, because I don't only want to learn about all the great things that they learned. I want to learn about those challenges they may have faced and how they were able to overcome that. And that provides some insight for me as to how they may work within our organization or whatever group I might be a member of, or professional role in my profession in our national society. Because everything is team-based nowadays. And those interprofessional skills that you develop, as well as that interprofessional learning of others, is critical so that you can be effective in your roles going forward. So I can recall when I was interviewing and they'd ask me how well I work on a team, give them some scenarios, and what stood out for me also is knowing the difference between a multidisciplinary team and an interdisciplinary team. You may work in different settings or be a part of different teams where many individuals are representative of different professions, different backgrounds, different walks of life. But do they truly work collaboratively together, and it's not just on paper. That we have all these disciplines and they're represented. What I like is when they actually come together, they share their experiences, they share their knowledge, and that is respected, and their input is very valuable as to what decisions are being made, how we're shaping and developing different programs. And as I go out into the community in some of my roles, that is very, very important, because I come in with my personal background, and I'm coming into a new organization where I might not be aware of what they provide or what services they offer or how I might fit into that process. But having been a part of previous interdisciplinary teams, that helps me bring that previous experience, that previous background, that training to the table, so that I can leverage those skills to build my career as a clinical occupational therapist and researcher, as well as being an instrumental member in those community organizations that I may be a part of. So all of these hats that I wear, as expressed previously in my bio, require me to be a part of an interdisciplinary team, not just within my institution, but in the community and in the national roles that I serve in, professionally and in other disability networks. So I personally have benefited from this, and I see that when I am interviewing applicants or members of different teams, because that really does stand out for me. It shows me that they've had some didactic instruction. It shows me that they've had some experiential learning, and that's something that's going to be valuable as employers.
Great. Thank you so much, Dudley. We really appreciate your perspective and hearing that from an employer. And thank you as well, John. It was great to hear about how your experiences and how to stay connected with the AUCD network. So this starts our panel questions now. So I would like to start us off by asking our panelists if they could tell us a little bit about themselves, kind of introduce themselves, and tell us a little bit about how they used their training to get where they are today. This is Stephanie again. I'll start. I spent a lot of time building up the LEND traineeship that I had on my resume. So I gave it quite a bit of space and listed out very specifically some of the leadership opportunities I was afforded. And so from there, then in my interviews, I was able to highlight some specific steps that I took to show my initiative. And one of the examples that I always included was while I was a LEND trainee, throughout the year I recognized that there was certain aspects of the curriculum that I felt were missing, that we spent a lot of time talking about difficult topics and how to manage difficult situations, but we didn't actually have any experiential learning or even didactic information on how do you deal with difficult conversations, how do you deal with it when colleagues do not get along, or when systems are causing, you know, a great number of barriers. And so I went to my director at the time and I said, I'd really love to create some curriculum around this topic of having difficult conversations, sharing difficult news with families. And I think because I took that initiative, she
Hi, everybody.
allowed me
this
to
is
kind of
Laurel
take it
Steedman. I
and
am
go
in Ohio, like
where I
Stephanie,
wanted with it.
and I was a
And
trainee
by
at
the
the
time
Ohio State
I was
University
done with my
Knight Songer Center from
fellowship and my
2013 to
traineeship,
2015.
I
And I was the virtual trainee for
had
1 year, and
curriculum
I think, Liz, you have done an awesome job as a virtual
development,
trainee.
leadership experience,
And I actually used to go to the trainee events, and I would be
and
like,
teaching
wow,
under my
Sydney
belt
Weber,
that I
she
wouldn't have had
got
I not
together.
taken
Maybe
that
someday I could
initiative.
be like
So
her. So it's
I
a
felt
pleasure
that
to be
was
invited to this panel.
something that
I
really
am a MHA,
was
so I'm a healthcare
a
administrator,
great
which
resource
means that
for me to
my
highlight
education is at the intersection of business and
about
healthcare.
the leadership capacity
Or
that I built
as
as a LEND
my
trainee,
clinical friends say, I do all
and
the
really
boring stuff.
bringing it home
So
with a specific
I got into
example.
this field because I
And
think
that's, I
that
think,
people
what
with
is
significant
really
health challenges are like the
impressive
gold
to
medal
me
of
as a training
tenets of
director
modern
when
health. If you can serve people
interviewing
with significant health challenges in a way that really addresses
future
their
trainees
needs,
as well as
and
folks
you know they
who
require
may come on to work
significant
on
clinical investment,
staff, is I
new
want to hear the
technologies, and care
specifics
coordination.
about
You can do that for people with
how they did
disabilities
it
who often have
in terms
co-occurring
of their leadership,
comorbidities,
not just
with
that they
behavioral health issues.
self-reflected
Then you have really reached
and
a
felt
high
like they
point
grew
of
a
competency
lot as a
in
person, but
serving people, and
how and
especially in
what
the
they
United
did.
States
And
healthcare environment,
I
this
think
is
that those are
a
important
really appealing
to
challenge.
keep in mind
And
as
like Stephanie
you
said, it all
move
comes
forward
back to the person.
and
You really know
applying
that
for
your work is making a
jobs,
difference.
is coming up with very specific
So my
ways,
job here at
whether
the
they're big
Ohio
or small,
Department of Developmental Disabilities
and
is waiver management and design.
all of our
And what that
minds, everything we
means
do is
that
very
the waiver
small,
program
but
has a certain number of participants.
really
And
give
that
yourself
number
a lot of
increases every year.
confidence and credit
There's
in the
really
work
high demand
that
for
you've
those
done, because
services in Ohio. So part of my job
LEND
is
and
figuring out how to
an IDDRC
get waiver
training
funding
is very,
available to the most people that we can.
specialized
And then all you clinicians out there, you
and very
provide
important
those
for the field
services
of
and you
developmental
get paid.
disabilities, so don't downplay
One
it at
part
all.
of my job is managing the waiver from that perspective, and the other part of my job is to develop new services. And as we said earlier in this webinar, you never know where you're going to meet people. So, Dougleen, I didn't know you were involved with assistive technology, and I'll probably email you after because Ohio is undergoing an enormous redesign of our technology services, which if you have ever met me, you know I'm a big nerd and I love technology and data, and this technology redesign of waiver services is an opportunity to do just that and bring a new set of services into Ohio. And the LEND program, I definitely wouldn't be here without the LEND program, who got me in the door at the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities. I did an internship there, which the LEND program supported. And then also in continuing to be connected to the field. So as an administrator, it can be really easy to dive into my spreadsheets and forget about the world. But I now have the ability to reach out to clinical staff and clinical people in my network and ask them the right questions. And I think that is a skill that developed throughout the LEND program. So I'll turn it over to Renee for her introduction.
Could you turn up your volume a little bit?
Still can't hear you, Renee.
Okay, well, while we are working on that, we will come back to Renee as soon as she has her microphone up and going. I just want to make sure we don't get too behind. So kind of leading into our next question, and we can always go backwards once we have Renee. We wanted to know how each of you market your experiences on your resume and when explaining it to a potential employer in interviews. Yes, we can.
Can you
so
guys
let's
hear
take
me now?
a pause from that question and do Renee's intro.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm Renee Jamison, and I am a faculty member at the University of Kansas Medical Center. And like my fellow panel members, we all have something in common, apparently, being the virtual trainee. So I was the virtual trainee in, I just figured it out, I believe 2006 to 2007, which I think was an incredible experience in terms of understanding the value of the AUCD network and being a trainee, which I think then really informed how to leverage those experiences. I have multiple roles where I am at now. I am a LEND faculty member, and I direct the research component of our LEND training. So I am able to teach in our classes and develop some research curriculum for our trainees, and also able to connect trainees to faculty members on research projects every year. My roles include clinical services, as well as research, as well as training and outreach efforts and community connections. And when thinking about how to leverage your experiences, I was blessed to be able to stay within the LEND. I did my LEND fellowship for 2 years at the center I'm at now, and was able to stay on as faculty.
This is Dougleen.
But I think some of the reasons is that really diving into figuring out what the value is of your training experience. So
Yes,
whether
I
you're
wanted
early and
to
this is
just
your
point
last
out that
year, or maybe you have
when
more
you're
time
developing your resume,
to do this, I think that
that's a key
understanding and recognizing the value of the
place
AUCD
to put it
network
on
and your training
up in the
experience
qualifications,
is
very
critical, because if you
high
can
up.
understand that
And
and
I
be able to
didn't
articulate
even
it,
change the header
then
for
others around you, whether
where my
they are
education goes
involved and knowledgeable about the network,
into
they will see
education
the
and
value in
fellowship,
that as
and that is
well.
where Mine is
One way to
listed.
do that would be to get involved
So when
early and continue involvement. I've heard this as a theme
I
come up.
interview for different positions,
Present your work
or
at the
depending on
AUCD
different
conference, even if
boards.
this is an
I
exit to your experience.
highlight the training that I
Presenting your work not only keeps you connected to the network,
received
but
and the
also
different
connects
projects
you
that I
to
worked on,
other
and
people
how
within the field that you
that
want to work.
can benefit
Even when you're going to another conference,
whichever
being knowledgeable
organization I
about
might be
the
applying
people
to.
that are at those conferences and the universities that they come from, and whether or not they have a UCED or a LIND or an IDDRC, that helps you as you interact with other people in the field and ask them about their research and identify commonalities that they're going to be able to connect with you on. I think the other thing that I always tell our trainees too is see the map on AUCD as a way to connect and leverage your experiences. If you're mobile, look around for where you might want to go geographically. See if there's a LIND or a UCED in that area, and how you can use those resources to connect with people in the field and with employment opportunities. And lastly, I think use NEARS, even though I'm reluctant and always needing my prompt, which is the database system for AUCD. You can look up information in there and see what people are working on, the projects, the research they're interested in, and this can be a great way to determine other people within the network that you might want to connect to. That's all I have right now.
I heard a lot of great advice throughout all of that, and fortunately for everyone, the AUCD conference is now accepting proposals until June 1st, so it's a good time to get your work in and show that off at the conference next year and make some of those connections that was discussed today. So for our next question, we will have about 2 minutes per person to kind of stay on track here. So if you guys could each tell us a little bit about how you market your experiences within the LEND or UCED fellowship on your resume and during interviews when talking to potential employers.
And this is Stephanie, and I would say my top resources are listed there on the slide. I really think that the book by Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In, well, there's been some controversy around some of its messaging. Great ideas. I feel like it's very, I had mentioned, helpful for those I was able to benefit that are kind of entering the workforce. I stayed at the center not where I was at, and so for women, but that they recognized all those lived experiences, and so well, to really know how we can support and bring up each other. You know, interviews for employment and really have that same position. However, I continue to leverage that the table in all the other things that I apply for, whether it's a grant or whether it's book that I've kind of carried with promotion me within my institution. Some of those institutions. One of the things would be to highlight listed there are more leadership-related be able to be involved with that are well as on a national basis. So when as a trainee, I became involved with on research and evaluation. I'm in the disability. Attending those meetings. So
going to point out 3 general resources.
I think this is a great place to put
I think I've been
if you've collaborated
a part of
on a research project. However, we work in
the AUCD network. I'd encourage you to continue to visit it
and most of what we do is collaborating with multiple types of professionals. And then also thinking about how you can highlight
mailing
what's important to whether it's an employee or employer that you're applying to, from the Harvard University or the next training position. Think about what's meaningful.
Not only
help me take my leaders, but highlight those skills to the next level, those training experiences, and really kind of outside the box as far as clinical leadership or interdisciplinary policy. That's the research aspect.
That's where you can help
business methodology.
Advocate for your profession as well as those causes that
so I would say Harvard Floral. So I agree that putting fellowship on your resume really impresses people. And they like to see that, and they say, wow, you were a fellow. So I think that has a nice impact, just getting your foot in the door for an interview. The list on the slide has a lot of different types of examples of your work, and I think what Stephanie said about specificity is important to apply here. So can you imagine showing up for an interview with a huge binder and like a big poster? You might overwhelm the people that are interviewing you just a little bit, or they would think that you are Leslie Knope from Parks and Recreation, which that might not be a bad thing. But I agree that including the fellowship on your resume and then examples, specific examples of your work, and in the healthcare administration field, I think the examples that you want to pull out for your interview are showing an example of trends and themes that are outside of the disability world that impact the disability world. And this was a theme of the 2015 AUCD Disability Policy Seminar, to reach outside of the quote-unquote traditional disability community and into places like understanding managed care or Medicaid eligibility changes on a national level, or even on a state level. Some of these changes are just within a state. So I think highlighting, if you're interviewing at an organization that focuses on disability policy, a really valuable part of your LEND program to point out are those opportunities you took to connect what you were hearing in your classes that focused on clinical problems, and then say, you know, people with this certain kind of chromosomal abnormality have a certain medical condition, and the treatment for that condition is currently not covered under any managed care plans. That is a really interesting and important piece of information, and what that does is say to the organization that you would help them counter those kinds of problems. Yeah, that would be my advice.
So much. Those are great answers. It really helps as trainees preparing to figure out what's next, how to leverage those experiences as well, and make sure that we're making them specific enough and clear enough for everyone. So for our last question, we will only have about a minute per person. So I am going to ask you each to give your top 3 resources that you recommend for newly graduating trainees and also trainees preparing for the next step.
Hi, this is Laurel. I have I have one book which I neglected to send to Liz, so I'm going to paste it into the chat box down here. There we go. Urkelwater, Disability Rights in the American Social Safety Net. Warning, it is a dissertation. It is literally this person's dissertation, but if you are
Your microphone has been turned on.
going to work in a space where an understanding of why we have the services, the kinds of services that we provide from the government for disability, this is an essential read. And then the second resource that I would recommend is Marcia Roth from the National MCH Workforce Development Center, I think through UNC, yeah, through University of North Carolina, teaches a class called Applied Methods for Health Transformation Implementation in Maternal and Child Health. And this was a fantastic systems class that talked about policy levers and system change. And I'm pasting it in here, and hopefully she still teaches this because it was excellent. There we go.
It looks like he's talking. We can't hear him yet.
This is Renee. Those are all great ideas. And to build on what Dougleen said, Also on the listservs, you will continue to get the information about requests for applications or proposals, whether it's additional research that you're interested in or fellowships. I think that's a great way to stay connected and to continue to utilize all the resources that you have when you're in a traineeship or fellowship or university. I already mentioned to get on the website and click on the map so you can figure out where you want to learn more. And then I like what Stephanie said as well, and thinking about the Harvard Business Review, because that is something that you get out of, I know, the Lind experience.
Your microphone has been turned on.
I know that you get out of the Lind experience is exposure to more than just the world of disability, and so I would encourage people to learn about business as much as possible and talk to other people, friends, colleagues, so that your resources can be kind of a systems-wide perspective and not just within your field.
Great. Thank you all so much. This now concludes the end of our panel. We appreciate you all so much. Hearing your input is so valuable for all of us as we get ready for our next steps. So we now have a few minutes for questions and answers. So if you have questions, please press the star button and then the pound button on your telephone keypad, and the call system will unmute you in the order in which you indicated that you have a question. You will hear a prompt when your phone line is unmuted, and then you may ask your question aloud. If you have a question, please go ahead and press the star pound button now, or you can type them into the chat box below the slides, and I will read them aloud for the presenters.
Your microphone has been turned
on. I think we may be having a few technical difficulties. So what I just said was that we have a few minutes for question and answers right now for those of you who weren't able to hear me. So if you have questions, please go ahead and press the star pound button on your telephone keypad, and the call system will let you know when you're ready to ask your question based on the order in which you indicated that you have a question. You can also type them in the chat box below the slides, and I can read them aloud for our presenters.
This is Anna. If you can also type your questions on the chat box. You can only press star and pound if you're using your phone. If you're not using your phone and you're on your computer or microphone, you can type your questions in the chat box, just to clarify.
Thank you, Anna, for that explanation. So I'm just going to scroll up here and see we have a question that came in. Can you please explain how to maintain membership in the network? Trainees often have questions about their membership. So perhaps we can send that over to John and Christine from AUCD. Am I unmuted? Do we still have John on the line? Okay, you can hear me? Great. Sure, that's a great question, and I think it does feel a little daunting.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, leaving a wonderful training program and then going
Great. So I think a
out on
couple
your
of
own.
ways you can do that. Certainly staying connected through
one
the
of the keys that I've always done is
mentioned,
kind of
through
looked ahead
listserv,
and done some research
and
picked out some of the
multiple listservs beyond just the Lend listserv
topics
to
that I'm most
keep you
interested
as a part
in.
of the AUCD
For me, it's
everything
things like
from
joint
new research publications that are coming out. You can find out about all those tools on the
discrete
AUCD
trial
website.
training, and so
Also
I look to see who
your
publishes
institution.
on those.
So staying connected to your USED.
And I'm very interested in early childhood, so I know who
tools through
the main
your training director and programs through your local
autism
institution.
experts
So
are in that area,
no membership
and I
cards
continue
necessarily that AUCD
to periodically get
for you
Google
a part of us.
Scholar
It is through
when they publish
the Lend
something new.
and,
That's
USED and
one way to stay
institution.
in touch
so I
with
hope
the
that's
best resources
helpful. And if you're not familiar with
and the people who are doing the research and publishing in the areas that you're interested
you can contact Anna on our staff directly.
But I think autism is
facilitate this call,
such a
contact me and we'll get you in the right place.
wide-ranging field, and there's
also
the Autistic
Opportunity
Advocate Network.
To these organizations by becoming a member.
Follow them on
I would
Facebook. It's something that I really enjoy.
it as a
So that I can see
if you
what they're coming out
those special interest
with
groups,
the
panel of professional advisors for the
from the
autism
some are more active than others,
person's
but if
perspective,
there's a specific specialty
as well
or areas
as,
in
you know,
which
the
you
people
can check out our
and then following
website, or if you're not finding
what autism
please feel free to reach out to
what
me
kind
directly, and you can find my contact information.
funds, grant funds,
staying
that they have available,
as well as being participatory in these organizations.
Thank you so much, Jen.
they asked me to do
And we only have time for one more question.
And
So this one is, what are your favorite resources and
So
organizations
it's a wide-ranging website there, and then
related to autism
kind of in the middle of the
identification, treatment, and support services?
road is more of your Autism Society of America, and then your local organization.
For that question, I think Stephanie Robert will have a great answer to that one. So Stephanie, would you like to answer that one, please?
Reaching out to the local director of your organization for Autism Society, and they can help keep you more aligned with what's going on locally and at the state level. So those would be the top suggestions I would have for staying involved around what's coming new and current trends in autism specifically.
Great. Thank you all so much. I would just like to take a second to thank our speakers and our panelists for joining us today and providing us with such valuable information. And then to kind of conclude this webinar, I would like to pass it over to Shada for a few reminders. Muted. We can't hear you yet. Yes, now we're good.
How about now? Okay, so remember this webinar is recorded and it will be archived. Please also submit your proposal to present your work at the AUCD 2017 conference before June 1st. So it's coming up. And there's also an opportunity to get some conference scholarships, so please keep an eye out for those opportunities as well to help you get there. Also consider reviewing proposals for the AUCD conference. You can email Crystal, and her email address is on this final slide, and do that by May 19th if you'd like to review some proposals and have that as an experience. Also consider applying for the Division of Maternal and Child Health Workforce Development for a fall 2017 practicum or internship experience. The deadline is May 8th, and then if you need more information, there is an email address on there that you can ask some questions or get some more information. And then finally, if you are prepping for an additional traineeship next year, whether it's through your LEND or a UCED, consider any sort of leadership opportunities like being a trainee liaison, assistant virtual trainee, or virtual trainee. It has been a wonderful experience for me this past semester, and I've had such a great time getting to know everybody. And I think that there's a place for everybody to get some sort of leadership and involvement in AUC in some capacity. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Liz or me or your trainee liaison to get some information about what those opportunities are like. And finally, our very last slide, I just want to say congratulations on getting through your year and completing your journey. It is a wonderful experience to see your commitment and dedication to these issues that affect individuals with developmental and other disabilities and their families and communities. And we're all very thankful for your support and involvement in the network. And I think that's it. That wraps up our end of the year webinar. So thank you all for attending, and let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you all. Congratulations.
Good luck. Thank you all. Congratulations.